So packages, and I sat down and I was thinking about how to really start the conversation about packages, because packages are something I have used in my software development for as long as I can possibly remember. And I really had to sit down and think about a time where I didn't have packages actively available to me. And when I was having this conversation with myself, I really brought it down to applications are complicated. And this screenshot is a great example of why. Have you ever built one of your projects that depends on more than just your code? This is an example of a simple ASP.NET application that we run where I need not just my code, but my code is dependent on different things that Microsoft has put out. It's dependent on different resources by third-party vendors. It's dependent on open source software. And for every line of code that I write, I might be dependent on 1 or 2 or 10 different libraries on top of that. And this stuff really starts to stack up. And if we go back, 10 years, maybe a little bit further, we still had this problem. We would sit down, and I'll use a perfect example. An application I worked on in 2006, 2007 was an old .NET WinForms application. And I was the new developer on the team. I was fresh out of college. We said, okay, well, Kevin, go get your computer ready. Go pull the code from source control, and we'll walk you through getting it to compile. And that's not a unique scenario to this company. I'm sure you have walked through this scenario in every business you've ever been a part of. The new developer on the team is the person who really tests how difficult it is to get your code compiling in a fresh environment. And that conversation went something like this. All right, you got to go get the code, then you got to go get this third party, then you got to go get that third party, then go get this this little library I wrote over here. Oh, well, you got version 1.0.2. We're really running 1.0.4. Where did I put 1.0.4? Let me go looking through the company network and click. And you find all these different pieces of the puzzle just to make the program compile. And it was very difficult to go find these pieces, and then you had to go reference them in Visual Studio, because Visual Studio didn't know where your local references were. It just knew where the references were of the person who checked in last. So you'd have to clear out all the old references and then go through and re-add them. And just getting one developer up and running just to build the project was this 3 or 4 day project all in itself. And then once that code compiled, we could start providing value back to the business. And I make this joke on the screen and say, hey, go get the utilities DLL, because I've been on a lot of projects, and every project almost has this one specific thing in common. We have the kitchen sink library, and I'm hoping folks are at home right now going, yep, we have that library. And what is that library? Well, it's the library that we distribute across all of our different applications, but we really don't have a better place to put it. That we don't have a better name. So we just call it utilities or just something very generic. And there's a problem with this particular library. How do we distribute it? Well, most environments I've been in, they have some sort of UNC path, and the developers have instructions. Oh, when someone does a new build or a new update of the kitchen sink, go put it up on the UNC path. And everyone gets an email. They go grab the new DLL and pull it in. But then what do we do about versions? All right, well, we could just put all the versions in this one directory. Well, are we naming them differently? Are they named the same, just different version numbers? You can start to see where there's a little bit of conflict. So a new version comes out. How do you distribute that to everyone that's going to need it? Because if I'm the developer working on the kitchen sink, I'll make my code changes and I'll create the new binaries. I'll put the binary up in the UNC drive. Then I very quickly have to write a new email to the entire development staff that says, hey, I fixed an issue, and every project we have that relies on the utilities DLL, you need to go grab a new version today. Now, this is assuming that everyone on the team sees this particular email right away. We also assume that we're not doing any production deployments that week. There's a lot of assumptions being made, and it's possibly a very broken system. If it's just you as a developer, or maybe you and another person, probably not as big of a deal. But the teams I was working on, we had 4 or 5 developers on one project, and then we had 3 or 4 different projects going on. So at any one time, probably 15 to 20 developers, and we were all using this kitchen sink utilities library. And we had to go update, and emails like this flew around all the time. And I don't think we were a unique situation, because I've gone into consulting clients afterwards where we have the exact same thing. There's the kitchen sink library that we have no idea how to better name it, how to better distribute it. But this code is just slightly better than copying and pasting into all of our different projects. Long story short, there really should be a better way of distributing code or dependencies throughout all of our different applications. And that answer, if you haven't guessed already, is NuGet. Now, I am a huge fan of NuGet. I have been using it since they first introduced it many years ago, many versions of Visual Studio ago. And over time, it has grown into quite the platform. Some of the stats here on the screen really start to home in on it. We have, over 5 billion package downloads. There's 96,000 unique packages up in NuGet, which that in itself is a fairly small number if we go look at some of the other package managers out there. And of all those packages, there's up over 1 million different versions of some of these packages. And we're going to talk through just unique packages. We're going to talk about versioning going forwards and backwards. And we're going to go pretty in depth into what NuGet in particular is all about. Now, in a moment, we're going to do a demo of just using NuGet, which I think will be review for most developers out there. But when you bring a package into one of your applications, what exactly is that package? Well, a package is just simply a container. Think of it like a zip file. In fact, you can rename any NuGet package if you just downloaded it with .zip extension and open it up. And it'll have in there all file scripts, everything it needs to properly add that assembly to your project. So some packages are just binaries. Here's the 3 DLLs for our library. Some projects like a jQuery might have scripts with it that say, okay, well, copy the JavaScript files to this location, but then go alter this file or that file to inject some code. I've seen other packages where we'll install binaries, but then it'll build out templates specifically for your project based off T4, which is outside the scope of this particular talk. But packages and scripting and files, this is a really powerful thing that we could take advantage of, but it is so far removed from our normal day-to-day click process that we really don't need to know about it, but it's doing a lot of really cool things. Packages normally are created by the creators of the libraries. And what do I mean by that? Let's use one of the more common libraries out there, JSON.NET. JSON.NET, it's really just a DLL or a couple DLLs. And the creator of JSON.NET or the team behind JSON.NET, whenever they do a new deployment, they build the NuGet package and they push the NuGet package up into NuGet, so the rest of us can take full advantage of everything they can put out. But the most important part is that these packages are stored on a central repository that all of us can access. So NuGet.org is really the public NuGet repository. Everything that is freely available for people to download and use inside of their own projects is up on NuGet.org. If I wanted to, as a software developer or a good person in the open source community, I could take my own libraries and push them up into NuGet.org. There's no cost to me. And then folks all around the world can come download my packages. If I ever needed more, let's say, flexibility or customized repositories around NuGet, NuGet is just a standard, and we could use other third-party sources to host repositories. And Visual Studio just knows how to talk to these different repositories. And we're going to talk about all that. Now, NuGet is unique to .NET. So if you're doing C#, you're doing Visual Basic, we use NuGet. But we're not the only platform that has a package manager of some shape. Node.js is kind of the more internet popular platform out there. They have NPM, the Node Package Manager, and then there's also another package manager called Yarn, which is slowly starting to pick up speed. A lot of folks have complained about the overall performance of NPM as a package manager. So Yarn has jumped in as a third-party replacement to NPM. If you're a Python developer, you probably have used pip in some way, shape, or form. Ruby has gems, famously. Go has GoPM. And we could probably go through every major language out there and find some sort of package manager that they have available. This is really important because every major language out there has some sort of package manager attached with it. That means packages in general just have some steam. So it's a general good idea. So the first thing I want to do is let's just look at NuGet.org and see what we can see. So in order to do that, I'm going to bring up a fresh browser, and we'll head over to NuGet.org. And now you get just the text box where you can type in anything. And so let's imagine I am a developer. I'm sitting down and I need to solve a problem. What would be a common problem I might want to solve? Well, let's see. I commonly work with a library called Twilio where we send SMS or voice messages. Well, let me type in just SMS. So I want to find a package that will help me do SMS. And there's actually quite a bit in here. I'm a fan of the one called Twilio. So let's say I go look at this first one, SMS, simple library for sending transactional messages. Okay, well, as a couple thousand downloads. Twilio has over 1 million downloads. It's been recently updated. Let me go look at Twilio. The NuGet page for the Twilio package actually gives me a lot of really useful information. The first part is how do you get Twilio into your application? I'm going to show you the GUI way here in a moment, but you could also use command line using PowerShell to install the Twilio package, a certain version. If we were using .NET Core, we could use the .NET CLI to add a package, and there's also a third-party NuGet client. If I scroll down, there's no documentation for this particular package. I probably should have picked a better one. But some packages have full documentation here that tell you what the package is about, maybe a little bit of usage, or just things that you should know about. Dependencies. Now, we're probably not going to go too in-depth into dependencies for different packages. But what's really nice about this Twilio package is that it supports multiple versions of the .NET framework. And I really don't want to test anyone's deep knowledge of how the .NET framework versions have changed over time. But there are some things where if I develop a library built in, say, .NET 4 or 5, I can't really use that in a .NET 3.5 application because it's built on a newer version of the framework than what my application is used on. So it's common practice for some of the more popular applications out there, or more popular packages, they support multiple versions of the .NET framework. And now we're in this really weird transition from what's .NET Full Framework to the .NET Standard or .NET Core. And the funny thing about it is that .NET Framework apps don't transition directly to .NET Standard. And what I mean by that is certain things exist in the .NET Full Framework that might not have existed in .NET Standard 4.1. .NET Standard 2 fixes a lot of these inconsistencies, but still we have to maintain not just one, but 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 different versions of our libraries based off of what the consumer, which is you, is going to use. And so I can look at these dependencies and I can say, all right, well, my application is running .NET 4.5. I should be safe running installing the Twilio library. Everything should at least compile, and I shouldn't have any major problems. And maybe down the line, if I start another application and it's built off .NET Standard 1.4 or higher, I could still pull in this library and everything should hopefully work. If I scroll down, there's a little bit of version history. I like Twilio because it's been a very active project over the past couple of years. We can go back through every version of the Twilio package and see how many people downloaded it, when was it released. This is useful for us because maybe I will build my application based around Twilio 5.6.0. And if I'm built on 5.6.0, 5.7 comes out, 5.8. Well, maybe these have breaking changes, and not like major breaking changes, but just subtle. It worked in 5.6, but doesn't work in 5.7. I am under no major timeline to upgrade my packages. I can say on 5.6 as long as I want to. It will always be up in NuGet. It's never going to go away. And this helps because if we go back to my kitchen sink scenario, what if we're just overwriting the file over and over and over and over again? And that's this good old slide right here. Somewhere. What if we're just overwriting this file over and over and over again? Well, there's no version management. If that file gets overwritten, and then all of a sudden Kevin over here sends an email out and then goes, oh crap, I might have fixed one bug, but I introduced 2 more. Because who's never done that? I don't have any way to go back and pull the old version back again. With NuGet, I have all the versions here. So maybe we do upgrade. We go from 5.6 up to 5.7. Well, there's nothing stopping us from downgrading a day later. So every version's up here. We'll also talk a little bit about pre-release versions. So if there's betas available to us that, as a developer working with .NET Core, I've come to rely on pre-release packages more than I did in the old full framework days, just because it seems like every day I'll run into this little niche issue. I'll find a GitHub issue ticket talking about it, and they'll say, oh, go download our pre-release. We have fixed this particular issue. Twilio in this case does not have any pre-releases available to it. If I wanted to find an example, I think Application Insights is a good example. Now I gotta find which one. Here, let's just look at the core one because I think this one has a pre-release. Yep. So here's a great example. Our current version that everyone should be using is 2.4.0. But there are a couple issues in that version that have been fixed in 2.5. But 2.5 is not ready for everyone to go upgrade. So they mark it as a beta, or it's marked as a pre-release. So it's not going to become the current version because it has that dash beta attached to it. It will always be a pre-release package. So the only people that can install or download that are the ones who selectively agree, yes, I am going to download a pre-release. So one of the common questions I get from folks when we talk about packages and we go looking through NuGet.org, and we say, oh, there's all this stuff that I can download. I don't have to write any of this code. I can just click install and it's done for me. What makes a good package? Because for every diamond in the package repository, there are at least, let's call them 10 turds. There's just a lot of crud in the NuGet repository. So how do you know what makes a good package? And I'm looking at a good package. Newtonsoft.json is considered the single most popular package in NuGet. If you did like the 6 degrees of Newtonsoft, Newtonsoft is usually the first degree every single time. It's in almost every single project, whether directly or within one installation. But Newtonsoft.json, we'll use this as an example because it points out a couple of the key things you should look for in any package that you're looking to download. The first thing is this little checkbox or the check mark. The check mark tells us that this is a NuGet.org approved package, meaning that the folks who work on Newtonsoft.json have talked to the folks at Microsoft who manage NuGet, and they're friends. They've done the handshake. This is a blessed package. If you download it, you can rest assured that you're getting good, high quality stuff. It's not every package on the repository has this, and I wish I had better numbers of who does. I know Newtonsoft does because he's very active with the teams, and this is a very highly used project. It's even used by several of the teams in Microsoft. So if we look at the new versions of ASP.NET, they're all using Newtonsoft.json underneath the scenes. The second thing you should look for is when was the last time this package was updated? So at the time I took the screenshot, it had been updated 5 months previously, but Newtonsoft is a very well maintained package. Even though it's gone 5 months without an update, they're constantly working on it. They're fixing bugs, they're getting stuff ready. So when they do a point release, so maybe a 11.0, it'll flip that switch and update when it was last updated. Make sure you're looking at things like the version history. You also want to look at download statistics. Newtonsoft, I said, was one of the more popular or the most popular package up on NuGet. It has 88 million total downloads. That's a lot, especially in comparison to all the packages on NuGet.org. It'll also tell you average downloads per day, 35,000 downloads per day average. You have to take these numbers with a little bit of context. It's not 35,000 unique people downloading Newtonsoft.json every single time. Most likely a good percentage of these numbers are build systems or some sort of background process that pulls code out of source control, downloads all the NuGet packages, builds the code, creates a deployable. So it's not 35,000 people per day average clicking install. It's mostly build systems. And then finally, check the version history. So we can look at Newtonsoft.json and go, all right, well, 10.0.1 came out about 8 months ago. There was a point release within a month, another point release within 2 months. It is an active project. So let's compare this with another package. So I'll use one that I wrote a very long time ago that hasn't necessarily been updated in a very long time. Now, I'm going to say this is a good package just from the sense that I wrote it. But if I were looking at this from a unbiased standpoint, last time it was updated was January of this year. All right, well, it's only had a couple releases since then. It gets an average of 1 download per day, 816 downloads. This might not be an immediate I trust it type download. You might want to put a little bit more thought into this download before you go get it. But it still has all the different parts. It does get some downloads. This is also a niche package, so that might be one thing to understand. But really be careful. And then you also have some packages like, let me use structure map as a third and final example. Some people are going to try to sneak in and add their own version of different packages for different needs. So you get things like this, where MVC site map provider, MVC 3DI structure map. So this is a verified owner a reserved owner, cumulus structure map. And some of these, let's say you're trying to add structure map to your application, you might have a little bit of difficulty figuring out what to do in here. This one's a great example. Structure map.microsoft.dependency injection. This is not the structure map package. And you might think, oh, well, it has the keywords in it. Structure map, Microsoft dependency injection. Yeah, you might have to put a little bit more thought into whether or not you want to download this, because the actual package was up here at the top for structure map. So, but I know the owner. So the owner, this is a good package. I would download this. Last thing you want to look for is the project site. So project site should hopefully take you to a GitHub repo, which the GitHub repo takes you to the legitimate structure map site. So disregard everything I just said about this possibly being a bad project or a bad package. This makes it a good package. If you go to the link, and the link points to the actual repository for a structure map. All right, so let's move on. Be careful of bad packages. There's a lot of them out there. Do a little bit of research before you just click install. But how to use NuGet inside of your own code in progress. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project. I'm a big fan of just starting fresh for everything I do. So let's do a new console app. I have a working directory, and we'll put it right here. So we'll just call this work in progress 1. All right, so we're inside our new application. Let's imagine I have a lot of code in here, and I want to go add a NuGet package. While I'm running Visual Studio 2017, the process is not that much different from 2015 versus 2013 versus 2012. All those versions of Visual Studio, all the way back to Visual Studio 2010, they all have NuGet built into them. So the couple ways I can go and reference NuGet packages. If you've done this before, I'm sorry for the review, but not everyone uses NuGet packages the same way. If I click on my references, we're all probably used to going to add reference and manually adding our own references. But managed NuGet packages is the way to go. And this UI is definitely going to be different between 2017 versus 2010. 2010, 2012, 2013, I believe they were special pop-up windows. They were different interfaces altogether. This is the interface for 2015, 2017. Both have basically the same interface. Now, if I come into NuGet, I get basically the exact same repository that I get on NuGet.org. And what NuGet will do for you is it will show you a list of the top 25 or more packages in NuGet.org. They know what people are using. And most likely, if you're bootstrapping a new project, you're going to need these same things as well. So you come in and say, oh, there's newtonsoft.json. This is what I want to install. Well, if you click on any package in particular, you get the version drop down. So you can go select any of these packages that you want. And these are all the packages available up on NuGet.org for us to download. I obviously like the stable version, so you don't have to go look at NuGet.org every single time you're anticipating downloading a package. Most of the important information is here for you, specifically dependencies. If I'm targeting .NET Framework 2.0, there's nothing I need to worry about. It's a supported dependency, including all the way up to .NET Standard. Even .NET Portable, you don't see that very often anymore. Last time it was published was just a couple of months ago. All right, it's somewhat up to date. If I absolutely wanted to know more about it, I could go look at the GitHub page. I could go to the actual project URL itself. There's these hidden options. I don't open these up very often, but you could tell NuGet. So if I install this, and package.json doesn't have any other dependencies of its own, but let's say newtonsoft.json needed to go install 2 or 3 other packages in order to function. This review changes box is going to tell me we're installing Newtonsoft, but we're also going to go install these other things. So we just want to let you know before that happens. Sometimes you might not want to install the dependencies. I have a couple cases where that's happened. But we can go through and we can say, let's ignore the dependencies. Maybe I have 2 or 3 packages that all rely on the same dependency but different versions of it. How do I tell NuGet which one of those dependencies to install? I want to make sure I don't overwrite a dependency I might already have. But I can come in here, I can tell NuGet exactly what to do. 9 times out of 10, you can just stick with the defaults and everything will just work. But your mileage might vary in that case. There's an option here for file conflict actions. If you're using a package that needs to write files specifically into your project, I mentioned structure map earlier. There's some structure map utilities that will write physical files into your solution. Well, if you change any of those files and try to update the package later, NuGet's going to stop and say, I would love to update this file, but you've changed it. And I really don't want to overwrite your changes. So tell me what to do. That's what file conflict action means. Now, if you don't do anything to the files, NuGet will detect that and it'll just override the files as it naturally would. I like to be prompted when that happens because if I'm prompted, I know what to expect. Let's make sure the Git branch is up to date or make sure TFS is up to date. We could just ignore everything, or we could just say, yeah, just overwrite everything. Don't worry about it. So install newtonsoft.json, hit OK. All right, I've already done this, haven't I? NuGet will go out and it will download the package. And if you look down in my output, we'll see we downloaded the package and it didn't download it directly into my solution. It downloaded into a separate folder called packages. So every package that you download gets cached and set aside. Then a reference to that package gets created. So if I come in here and look at, here's newtonsoft.json. Well, where is that physical DLL? Well, that physical DLL is right here in my solution directory, packages, and then there's the DLL. All NuGet has done for you is it has automated the task of going to download the DLL, putting it in a place where we could find it later. Right-click, add reference, clicking browse, and then let's see. This is why it's great to automate. Let's go to packages. Let's go to Newtonsoft. Let's go to lib. Let's go to .NET 4.5. Let's find our DLL. Let's create a reference to that. This is all NuGet's doing for you underneath the scenes. But just watching me for half a minute doing that is pretty tedious. Imagine doing that for every single assembly that you need to bring into your app. All right, so we bring in our package. We're good to go. And we can just start going to use it. So I could say, all right, well, let's do a JSON convert. And all right, well, I have my reference. I can bring JSON convert in, and I can start using the library the way I normally would. So everything's great. Now I mentioned before you can sometimes install pre-release packages. These are specifically going to be marked, and it will never be offered to you by default. So if I go back into Visual Studio, let me show you an example. Oh, not add reference. What did I say? Application Insights. Now, Application Insights has its latest version, which is 2.4.1. Let me use this one. So 2.4.0. Well, there's a box up here at the top of the screen that says include pre-release. And if I select that box, I now get access to not just the stable version of Application Insights, but I have access to a pre-release version, which is beta 1. And if I were to select that and hit install, the same process I showed you before will work. I'm just using a newer pre-release version of the DLL. And then if there's an update, so maybe 2.5.0 beta 2 comes out, well, that will come up to me as something that I can update a little bit later. So let me install that just for fun. Again, NuGet's telling me, all right, I can install Application Insights beta, but in order to do that, I have to go install Diagnostic Source. All right, Hit OK. Everything gets downloaded into our packages folder, which we just saw, and the references get added. And keep in mind, you won't install them unless you physically go click the button and physically say, yes, I want the pre-release. But keep an eye on the developers on your team, because they might just go in and start installing stuff willy-nilly. Periodically, packages will get updated. All good software, it should continuously get better, because we can never write it perfect the first time, right? As good as we are, we will never write software perfectly the first time. So stuff will have to get updated over time. And we can check for these updates in the Updates tab. Now, you might just saw inside of my Visual Studio, I had an indicator next to my Updates tab. And I will do this on occasion, go into NuGet and say, all right, well, what is currently available to update? So this is looking for updates to application insights. Let me clear my search box. So this is telling me I have Newtonsoft JSON installed, but there's a pre-release, which is technically an upgrade. It's not 10.0.3, which is what I currently have installed. There's a pre-release version. That's an upgrade that I could do unless I unselect include pre-release, and then it's not shown to me. But diagnostic source, I just installed this with application insight. So why is it coming up as a upgrade already? Well, it's not because it just got updated 2 minutes ago. The reason it's coming up as an update is that application insights, if I go back and look at the dependencies, requires diagnostic source 4.4.0 or greater. So it's only going to install 4.4.0. If I go back and look at my updates, I have 4.4.1 as the new latest stable version. Now, I could safely go install this and probably nothing will break. But as just common practice, when you go through and do a mass updating of your packages, make sure that's happening in a separate branch of source control. Just something that you can control, because I don't know how many times I've gone into projects that haven't really been touched in 2 or 3 months and just upgrade everything, and I break everything because packages are written by humans and humans break stuff. But something like this, go click upgrade, and now I should have the newest version. What NuGet will do for me is it will essentially remove the reference, download the new package, add the reference again, and my application is all in sync. I can also, let's bring up, let's go work in progress. Let's go in packages. I only am maintaining a reference to the version I have installed. So my disk space isn't getting taken up by multiple versions of diagnostic source. NuGet's going to do that cleanup for me, which is really nice. So the next common question that I will get when talking about NuGet is, Kevin, can I create my own packages? And the answer is yes, absolutely. You can create your own packages. Kevin, can NuGet support our private packages? So let's use, as an example, my kitchen sink example. My kitchen sink code is great and very useful to the 20 people on my team. However, that is not useful, nor anything I want to expose to anyone outside of our infrastructure. NuGet.org packages are public by default. There is no private option on NuGet.org. I don't want you pushing private packages up to NuGet. Don't push up your authentication code for your web application to NuGet, because anything you push up into NuGet can get downloaded, could technically get reverse engineered. Just don't push it up there. But there are package managers out there, for example, ProGet, that will take care of this task for you. If you need to control who has access to a particular package, managers like ProGet will do all that and a lot more. And hopefully we touch on a couple of the different use cases where NuGet just kind of falls short. It doesn't handle some of the needs that we might have for enterprise software development. As a best practice, do not commit your packages into source control. The whole reason I am bringing this up is that I have been on many projects where we go in, we pull down from source control, and it takes a couple minutes because there are so many binaries up in source control. Every little utility library be written, those DLLs are all up in source control. All third-party dependencies we have are up in source control. We don't want to commit those packages. And I call that an anti-pattern. As soon as you commit your package folder, you've done something wrong. So a couple of reasons we don't want to commit the packages. First, they take up a lot of space. They're binary files. And they're also files we can easily get from NuGet all over again. They also don't diff. You don't care about the differences from one binary to another binary, and you can't check those diffs anyway, because any good diffing program is just going to tell you, well, this bit was 1 and now it's not 1. So it's something else. The alternative to pushing up the actual physical packages is to push up your packages configuration file or your CS_proj file. And this will depend on what version of .NET you're using. If it's .NET Full Framework, it's probably packages.config. If you're using .NET Core, it will be a CS_proj file that stores all the NuGet dependencies. And what happens is when a new developer comes and pulls down the code or pulls down an updated version of the code, NuGet will automatically go get those packages from NuGet all over again. I'm going to take and open up a command prompt. So if I go into work in progress, this is the root directory. I want to create a Git repository. And if I were not paying attention, I could accidentally check in packages into source control. I'm going to do that for fun real fast. All right. Oh, what's this? 57 new ads. What does that look like? Well, it wants to check in all these different DLLs, all these new pack files, all these XML files for metadata. This is stuff I don't need to check in. So for the same reason you won't check in your object folders or your bin folders, you shouldn't check in your packages folder. So I'm going to show you. Let me open this back up in Explorer. And the nice thing about Git is I just delete the directory. The Git repository is gone. So let's start this over from scratch. We'll say git init, and instead of just creating, just adding everything, I'm going to create a git ignore file. So we'll say code. I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to show you a couple of my favorite tools. And of course, Visual Studio Code won't just open the file I asked for it. So what do I put in there? I am not a git ignore connoisseur by any means, so I'm just going to show you a tool that will do it for you. You go to gitignore.io, and gitignore.io will help you build ignore files. So just tell it what we're doing. We're using Visual Studio. We're using Visual Studio. I'll hit create, and here's my entire ignore file. If you never realized how much stuff you should ignore in source control, this is a really good good overview. But let's look at this real fast. Let's scroll down and let's find packages. All right, so packages, NuGet packages in particular. All right, so NuGet packages. Obviously, we don't want to commit NuGet packages themselves because we can always rebuild a NuGet package. Any packages that we download, we don't want to commit into GitHub. And then there's also very NuGet specific files that we don't want to push in. This is specific to NuGet v3. If you have a .NET Core app that's using project.json files versus packages.config. But I have all my packages here. I'll hit save. If I go back out to my command prompt and hit enter, notice I have a slightly different number. So now git status says, all right, well, I'm going to commit git ignore, the solution file, and then the project folder. So add everything. We'll look at our status one more time. It's only the files that I deeply care about, specifically packages.config. So let me hit commit, and we'll say init. All right, everything's committed. Now, while we're talking about package config, let's go look at it. Well, this is all the packages that we currently have dependencies on. There's my NuGet JSON, there's diagnostic source, there's application insight, and specifically the version that we rely on. So remember, I upgraded application insights to a pre-release. That pre-release is marked right here. Let's say I come in. I'm going to close this solution real fast. Now let's imagine I'm a new developer. I git clone, pull down my source control, and I'm going to delete the packages folder. So it will not exist. And while we're at it, I'll go and delete bin and object. So this is a very fresh project right out of source control. We'll open our project all over again and automatically recreate my bin and object folders. But I don't have those packages that I need. Well, technically, the references don't exist. You'll see the references have warnings. We can't find application insights, we can't find Newtonsoft, we can't find diagnostic source. So if I try to build this, what will happen? Well, build will succeed. So why did build succeed? Well, that's because behind the scenes, Visual Studio went and restored all my packages for me. So a new developer coming on to the project pulls down the latest source code, just hits build. NuGet takes care of the rest and downloads the packages automatically. Now you might have noticed here in the output screen, we can disable that particular option. So if you don't want NuGet to download missing packages, you can turn that off.